Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 5th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe, and I'll serve as your host as I start off every week. Thank you so very much for giving up a part of your Monday evenings to join us here on Beyond the Headlines. So whether you're looking at us on GBN Television, whether you're listening in on GBN Radio or any of our social media platforms, thank you for being a part of this evening's edition. We're essentially continuing from last week because the focus remains on Spicemas 2025. Last week we heard from officials within the Spicemas Corporation, the SMC, and now we are going to be hearing from other stakeholders. So I would like to welcome my team of 4, ladies first. So Chrislyn Lashington, promoter of Beach Bum, welcome.
Thank you.
Dylan Charles of C4 Promotions, welcome.
Thank you.
Montee Grennidge, you're a regular. I should even welcome you.
That's all right. If I'm on some list that I keep getting selected.
And former Minister of Culture, former chairman of the Spicemas Corporation, carnival enthusiast Arley Gill. To you all, welcome and thank you for facilitating or assisting in sharing with the public on things Spicemas. Just as a kickoff, last Friday, on the 3rd of May, we had the launch, 2nd of May, sorry, we had the launch of Spicemas. Overall impressions, and this is an open question, overall impressions of the launch.
I think it was the biggest carnival launch I've seen in a while. Mm-hmm. So if it's that we're going off, if that's the energy we starting off with, I think we're heading for a big carnival as well.
Okay. Chrissy, just how would you describe the start? So the crowd, yes. Yeah. How would you describe that start to Spicemas 2025?
I think we did what we're supposed to do in terms of portraying the various aspects of Carnival. So it was a good representation of Calypso, Soca, there was Pan, we had traditional mass as well as fancy mass. So I think, in terms of presenting what Carnival is largely about, and the queens who've already been selected to represent each parish. So from that aspect, I think it's a good start. We're there. I'm not sure if there was a media launch, but at least we had the launch itself, and it seems we're going in the right direction once we keep the momentum.
Okay, once we keep the momentum. So therefore, what are some of the expectations for Spicemas or within the next 2 months now that we've had the launch? Montee?
Well, to start off with the launch, and good night to all our listeners and to the panelists. I just wanted to say that in terms of the launch, right? I think, and I don't want to start off being critical, but I think I don't like the fact that launch is not on a Friday. It's too much of a after-work climb. It's too much of a rush to even be a part of the experience. And over the years, I've been clamoring for more atmosphere to be added to it, right? Because I think when you try to launch Spicemas, it should capture in its essence the different demographics and what they love. So, for instance, Pan. Not everything has to be in a concert forum, a concert spectacle. Pan could be coupled with food and creating an atmosphere for Pan lovers to be able to immerse themselves in that atmosphere. And Jab and Vehicle and likewise. So that is my disappointment that I have not seen that evolution of what a carnival launch should be, right? And so I kind of can't say that I've partaken largely in it. But in terms of expectation, I'd like to say I would like to see that the energy, as Dylan alluded to, that we started off had a good turnout, and we hope that energy could be transferred into events, right? Not just from promoters alike, but even Spicemas becoming more dynamic and becoming more thoughtful in the things that they're going to put on to make sure that Spicemas in itself is a product.
Ali, philosophically, the launch of Spicemas, some of the expectations, and what would we anticipate happening post-launch?
What it means is that the thing start. That's what it essentially means. I have a bias for launch of Carnival on a Saturday rather than on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening after work climb. But I think, as alluded to by persons who spoke before me, so it seems as though the crowd is there, the enthusiasm is there. One of the things that we wanted to do in a Spicemas launch is to ensure that the different aspects of Carnival is represented and so on. And I think what Grennidge is alluding to is to ensure that every year we mix it up in terms of creativity, so that the pan doesn't have to be on the stage, but it could be one person's coming in, and he touches a very important aspect of the food culture, the cuisine and so on. Some years ago we tried the Carnival, it didn't really come out the way we wanted it, but that aspect of our culture, because really and truly Carnival is the biggest stage, is the biggest platform for different cultural sectors, so that, you know, as more we can increase and more we can bring that into it, it's all well and good. Now it's up for the momentum. Where do we go next? What do we have next? Traditionally, when we have Carnival launch, we look to next the Calypso tent launching and coming out and doing 4, 5, 6 shows before the
that
tent
was like
actually
40 years ago.
More like 20. Right. But I think in recent times, and I must give Kaisobad some kudos there. I think Philny Jeffrey and his crew over the last 2-3 years have really made a big effort to do shows before launch. Roseman Kelly and so on, that tent started off in St. David's last year. The organization looked rather promising and so on. So I think this year, hopefully, we can again have the Calypso tents coming on stream early. So that what we do not really want now is for there to be a lull, where the next month or so we have nothing to look forward to or to do. You know, basically, you can't just rely on the private promoters. So we have to now look to what else Spicemas have in store to keep that energy. Obviously not the same level like what we had in the launch, but persons can look forward to different things and so on and so forth. So that I expect that as we continue to climax in the mass in August, that we can have, you know, maybe every week or so on some sort of carnival type activity that one can look forward to.
Dylan, if we're just focusing on the next 2 months post-launch, what are some of your expectations?
As Arley and Montee were hinting towards, I think we used to do stuff like Carnival City, Pump Up the Grennidge, those sort of events that Spicemas itself puts on. That allows the public and people at large to get accustomed to the soca's, the new songs, the Calypso tents that will get you involved in all the banter of the new Calypso songs, etc. Those are the events that Spicemas needs to focus on and focusing on and put those on, so that people get involved. It doesn't have to be the private promoter who plays everything in their events. These events are geared towards supporting and uplifting and encouraging new and rising artists, as well as stabilizing the old, well-known artists, etc.
Right. The CEO did promise during our conversation last week that we would see the relaunch of Carnival City. They have some details to work out, relocation, etc. But that was one of the promises. Chrissy, just your expectations over the next 2 months, what we anticipate or you anticipate post-launch?
I think what I liked was the fact that the Spicemas Corporation launched the calendar of events months ago. I think it was since last year. So we have at least, especially as private promoters and potential promoters, we have an idea as to where we can fit in events based on what's happening. And if I remember correctly, so we've launched at the beginning of May. Carnival City is in June, weekly, in June only, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think the first parish launch is at the end of May, the 31st. So I'm not sure what's happening for the next few weeks. It will be nice to see maybe some community events. That will be nice. And then we really keep that momentum because we've launched. We're now excited. Give me something else. And I agree with Dylan mentioning, you know, maybe it's an opportunity to partner with promoters doing something. I would say too is something I wished happened before even the launch is some of the stakeholder engagements. You know, some of this, yes, they've met with some of the stakeholders, but not all. I think we're yet to have a promoters meeting for the season, which is something really important before the season is even launched.
Let's clarify this, because if we're developing a calendar of events, and yes, SMC had the published calendar, because some things are locked, you know, Friday night is this, you know, second Monday and Tuesday of August is that, etc. Wouldn't you, certainly I would have anticipated, and hence I'm just clarifying, that there would have been meetings with promoters to ensure that there is a full season that one can access from launch to the climax on Carnival Tuesday, or some people go through the Saturday after Carnival.
That is the expectation, and I think that is the ideal scenario. I'm not sure why that hasn't happened as yet. However, I mean, the licensing period was open, so we can go in and get our event licenses. This is an individual process for each promoter, and that's all well and good. The period opened earlier this year, so that's good. However, we have to recognize that promoters of Carnival, if we take out the attendees of various Spicemas events, if we take out perhaps the singers, Calypsonian soca artists, promoters are probably one of the largest stakeholder groups when you're looking at a period from May to August. You want to meet with these people in advance of your launch, well in advance of your launch, especially if there are specific rules that we need to be guided by. You know, there's certain things we need to do. We're planning our events from the last year. The minute Beach Bum is finished on Carnival Sunday, I am planning for Carnival Sunday next year. So we have to recognize and understand what stakeholders go through and have a system in place to facilitate that.
Okay.
Especially where new regulations come in place and no stakeholder has been engaged, and everyone just sees that document floating around on WhatsApp or on social media, and it comes with implications that attract some new form of levy or tax. I mean, it's almost like a slap to the face, but we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we do our part. I mean, as Chrissy said, we are probably the biggest stakeholder group within Spicemas. We've worked year after year, executed excellent events to lift the image of Spicemas. It's not just Juve anymore. There's a week of events leading up to our Carnival, or 2 months at this point.
And they ought to be, because if you launch in May, that's 3 months. We anticipate things Carnival.
Correct. Right? Whoever decide on the day of what day in May to start, kudos to them. Some may argue whether or not those events are actually Carnival events or a regular event. Nonetheless, those events are garnered towards building the hype, the momentum towards Spicemas. And again, if you're not going to engage with the very stakeholders that help promote and propel Spicemas, then what are we doing?
Okay. Montee, what type of stakeholder engagement would you anticipate would have been held, but certainly ought to be held within the next couple of weeks?
Well, just to echo the sentiments of Dylan and Chrissy, is that, well, we should have had engagement already with regards to the expectations. And as I said, with hearing of new changes and so in policy, and so these are things that are important, right? Because when it comes to planning, you need to know, especially if there's financial implications to what you're doing, right? So I would say that Spicemas needs to at least get the ball rolling, reach out to the promoters, because, as I said, there's no Carnival without promoters, because Carnival in its essence is Monday and Tuesday, but we create the season, we create the build-up, right? And without that, just the what we have as the fixtured shows, like the semi-finals and the 10s and whatever it is, then that appeals to a whole different demographic, with the exception of maybe Soca Monarch or so, but it appeals to a different demographic. So all of the, especially the youth, and so we that create that flavor that they want to go to and that hype. So I think there have to be outreach, I think that there's too many low-hanging fruits. I always see that's allowed to just stay there and spoil, and because we always have this mad rush when it comes down to close to Spicemas, where we have to have this meeting to deal with this, and we have to get back to it. So why put ourselves in such a position? Have the engagement now, because then you give yourself enough time for feedback and whatever back and forth. And as a matter of fact, this should have been happening long before the launch of Carnival, if you ask me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ali, stakeholder engagement and the importance to the smooth running of a carnival, and what type of stakeholder engagement you envision. So we heard from promoters, but there are other stakeholders that will be important towards the execution of carnival.
Allow me to make these 2 points. One, promoters is the fourth estate of carnival. Mass Pan Calypso promoters, media now is fifth. The modern evolutionary dynamic of carnival says to us that promoters is the fourth estate, in a real manner of speaking. Carnival 20, 30 years ago did not have the amount of private investment, I like to call it. Because when we speak of carnival, we're speaking about the major cultural industry. And we're speaking now, when the guys speak of promoters, they're investors and businessmen. It's just that they're not investing in tires and oil and gas, but they're making strategic investments. And they want to know how the dollar would spend and the value of the dollar and so on. So that it's a little bit disheartening to know that the issues with the private promoters and so on has not been ironed out yet. I hope that the SMC will deal with that ASAP. That is absolutely important, because especially as they pointed out, I myself on social media and so on see different new regulations coming, 5%, this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth. So that is extremely important. But also what you need is smooth relationship. One of the things that continue to plague our carnival every year is that somebody have to outfire. Let me make a point from experience. I hope the politicians stay away. It's always a dirty wrench in the issues of carnival when persons go above SMC, like promoters and so on. No. SMC and promoters have issues, they must discuss it among themselves and so on. The minister may come in if needs be to give a government insight and so on. But what we really need is that the people in carnival discuss carnival business and so on, and that we do not have to go upstairs to trash out certain things. But that is relationships. You always have to build relationships with promoters. You can't, in the modern carnival, we cannot do without them. Colin, what I have seen, and I go to multiple carnivals every year, and the positioning of Grennidge Carnival now, Grennidge needs to wake up. Spicemas needs to wake up. With Trinidad and Tobago, and then crop over, first, second, and then Grennidge and Antigua Carnival is right there. All of the Caribbean carnivals are growing enormously every year. They're growing leaps and bounds. We do not have big mass bands at St. Lucia, for instance. I've been to Dominica Carnival this year, massive shows, massive events, and so on. Dominica has been the most traditional carnival for years. They don't have a soca monarch. They have the Calypso finals used to be the biggest show. Now they have so many private events rivaling the Calypso show. I mean, as a Calypso lover, I like to see it, but it's a modern reality. And as Montee spoke earlier regarding the new demographics and so on, you can't force people to come and listen to Calypso if they want to go into bouillon, for instance, you see. So that is extremely important that we culture Spicemas Corporation as the body responsible for executing the carnival, and that there's good relationships between the stakeholders. Now, persons would not appreciate, persons who now come in carnival just say about Spicemas. Before Spicemas, when you had the carnival committee, one of the big issues we had was that Mass Pan and Calypso people was complaining every year that they don't have a say in the run of Carnival. And that is why you will see in the structure of Spicemas Corporation, you have representatives from Mass Pan and Calypso, so that the issues of Mass Pan and Calypso can be tabled at the level of the Spicemas Corporation, so that one would expect, though, that once the Mass Pan and Calypso representatives sit on the table year-round to discuss Carnival, that when August comes around, we don't have issues with prize money. We don't have issues with this and that, because that would have been discussed at the Spicemas level. However, one of the weaknesses of our Carnival is the dysfunction of these organizations, the strongest of which is PAN, right? But Calypso still have two organizations that don't function, and Mass Band's not there where it's supposed to be. I know that last year there were discussions of traditional Mass Band Association. I don't know where that is at. But I know Mass Band, all is not well in Mass Band. I still have a division between the new Mass Band leaders and promoters and the old Mass Band leaders, and so, which is not healthy. Which is not healthy. So that we now need to, and this is what I'm thinking, that before Carnival is launched and so on, that these things will be ironed out. Of course, Spicemas cannot take responsibility for all of that, but one would expect that what exists as the old Mass Band leaders and the new merging guys, C4 and so on, all the new initiatives and so on, and welcome these guys, right? Come in and bring new vibes and new energy on the street. It's not to say that we need the old designers and so on to give us the flavor and so on. But organizationally, hopefully we can have them as one unit. You see, so that is an issue. The dysfunction of the stakeholder, Mass and Calypso in particular. PAN is by far the best organized. And so that's why PAN could give us all these different shows, PAN on the Sand, PAN Expression, and so on and so forth throughout the year. But we don't have that strength in the Mass and in the, because if the Mass and the PAN and the Calypso and so on, the organizations can be stronger, it gives Spicemas less work in doing a season. Could you imagine PAN Expression comes after the launch of Carnival, for instance? That's one event that Spicemas don't even have to worry about. Now let me speak about the fifth stakeholder, very weak, the media. After this, what is it that GBN is doing for the rest of the season? You're looking at GBN every day. I can't see old Calypso shows, old March Girls and so on. Features on Carnival. GBN for years did a wonderful thing with Spice Up the Carnage and so on. Are they going to get back into that and so on? But we need educational programs, we need Carnival programs. Don't leave it up to Spicemas alone. The media houses need to play a role. Television and radio and so on, educating junior Calypso, Colin. That's where we started to judge Calypsos. What are the investments now are we going to make now in junior Calypsos? So that, well, the guys are doing some good work in junior Soca Monarch and so on and so forth, but the Calypsos. So that tremendous development work needs to be done, and that will aid us a lot in keeping the season. If you have all these little activities, the media doing nice little, like what we are doing now, but doing more. I know that a particular radio station does a wonderful thing, but I don't know if I can. It's protocol to mention.
But you can say GBN. If it's not GBN, then it's a radio station.
Yes. But I'm saying that we need more media houses doing it, especially television stations and so on, building the vibes during the season and giving features, not just to, a lot of guys don't record Calypsos because they say you don't play it on the radio.
Right. But it's almost a chicken and egg, because if you don't record it, it can't be played. So you can't.
I know we have a lot of studios,
right?
So that we really need, and that's another important element of the quality of the studios and so on. But we can't speak of everything in 90 minutes. But yeah, Colin, the dysfunction of the Calypso Association, of the Calypso and Mass Associations, concerns me. It put a strain on the SMC in really getting things off the ground, and we need to see a more active media community in terms of do features on the mass bands, go to the mass camps, see what they are doing and so on and so forth. All of these things help, in my respectful view, to build the season and so.
Dylan, Mass Band Association. I know that you have a band on the road, and that's a recent introduction.
Correct.
are you a member of the Mass Band Association? Do we have a functioning Grenada Mass Band Association presently?
So no to both questions. No, I am not a member of the Mass Band Association, and no, I don't think there's currently a functioning Mass Band Association. I would give SMC the props. They tried to intervene. However, all intervention seemed futile. I think Chrislyn is actually a part of the Mass Band Association. Kudos to her for getting in, but there seems to be some form of reluctance from allowing the newer bands, what we termed as party bands, entry into the fold.
Are there rules that the association have that the party bands do not qualify for membership? What's it? Because you must know what the ground rules are in order for you to be able to participate.
I want to believe the main sticking point, and this is we can say this openly, the main sticking point for most people is where the costumes are being made. All right, Carnival is evolving. Carnival is not where it was 20 years ago. And not to say that we can't do it here. We have a couple issues when it comes to that. One, the old stakeholders or the old mass band leaders, for whatever reason, did not pass on or did not teach persons their wire bending tricks or the business of Carnival. Or they haven't grown their businesses to the point where they could educate or they could expand their business to facilitate all these things. All right? Carnival is growing. We are in, as I've rightfully said, we are in a competition. We slip, we slide. I'm actually going to disagree with Arley and say it's Trinidad, then Grenada, then everybody else. That is where it is. I don't know if you heard, you cannot get a room in this country from the first week of August to the second week, to the end of the second week of August. If you could find a room, I'm telling you now, probably charge the highest premium you could charge, you will get it booked. All the bands, all the parties are selling out. Every time I check the social medias, I'm seeing 50% sold out, 75% sold out. And this is to circle back to say, we are not where we were 20 years ago. So we are seeing a lot more traffic. Can Grenada produce for that traffic?
On average, give us a sense of the size of a band like yours, the party band, and if we can reflect on what the traditional mass band sizes would be like. So
let me be honest. Our first year, we probably saw a number like 400. Second year was around 700. Last year, 900 persons. This year, we're looking at about 1,000, 1,200 people.
Okay.
Right? That is one band. There are predominantly three big bands with about the same size or probably bigger. The biggest party band 10, 20 years ago was Summer Crew. And Summer Crew probably had either between 750 or 1,000 people. And that was...
I probably may argue not that many.
Yeah, about
right?
5 or so, yeah.
Right? And look where we are now with 3 bands having that number across the board.
Correct.
Can we facilitate that? No. Those are incentives that SMC should be encouraging, together with the Mass Band Association, creating wire bending workshops, costume workshops, etc. We took it upon ourselves, and by the way, we only got into this mass band business because we saw the failures of Carnival in one of the previous years. We said, you know what, we have this organization thing.
Business opportunity as well.
We saw the business opportunity as well, but we had to take a risk, and it was an investment that we didn't necessarily see a return on for quite a while. Right? This is not every year we see in green.
Right.
It's been seen red, but for the love of Carnival, because this Carnival is a legacy thing for our family. I come from Moss International. So Carnival has been in my family for years. The first jab song, as they say, Jambalasi. But we stuck it through, and we made sure that the product we're giving back is of a quality that represents what Spicemas is meant to be. It's a standard, right? And in bringing out this band, we would have partnered. We didn't understand costumes, wire bending, what the market needed. We went to the experts, in our view, which should have been down Trinidad. So we partnered with a big band in Trinidad. They gave us their expertise, we gave them our expertise, we put it together, and we have what we have Vibe Mass now. Vibe Mass has been able to, FMC start at 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock that band is on the road. They have masqueraders now. If Juve going on till 10 o'clock, them leave the road 6 o'clock already to go home, bathe, change, and make sure they meet the truck. While other bands or other masqueraders have to wait till 4 or 5 to start, which then offsets everything else. And again, SMC is trying, but again, I believe SMC is not properly equipped to handle the sheer volume of where Spicemas is right now. So we're facing multiple problems, whether or not it is that the new bands can enter the fold because of the criteria that is set for us to enter the fold, which is whether or not costumes are made here. Again,
but is there an opportunity,
definitely,
working with SMC to have an intervention? Because if we do not have the expertise on island to deliver 1,200 costumes times 3, times 200 costumes times 4, then we ought to outsource.
Correct.
And it makes no sense in my mind to say we banish you, although we can't supply you.
So while that is true, SMC is its own body. The Mass Band Association is its own body with its own rules. SMC can't tell the Mass Band Association what to do. They can encourage.
And that is fair, but let's take another step, because for example there is competition in terms of Band of the Year competition. That is an SMC competition, and SMC decides who can participate, not the Mass Band Association. Right. So one would think that SMC can decide all bands can participate in my competition, my here being SMC.
Correct. They've been trying to do that. The feedback, however, is not welcoming and warm at this point in time, from what I've seen and what I've gathered. I mean, there are other ways for private investors, such as ourselves, to encourage the evolution or the raising of the bar in terms of costume bending or costume making. Right now, we've pushed, with our relationship with outside, we've pushed some of our local designers to design for these bigger bands, and they're very successful. One of them is designing for Trinidad, St. Vincent, Antigua, Jamaica at this point, and that is the sharing of expertise that we need, because we're not trying to get left back. Again, Carnival is a business, and we're in competition at Carnival right now. So it's not that we can't. If we're looking at St. Vincent and St. Lucia, who are giving us a run for our money, we can have costumes that are not up to scratch with their costumes. So what are we doing to encourage that development?
Okay. Chrissy, Mass Band Association.
Yes.
How can we assist in the evolution of the Mass Band Association in order to protect and promote our Spicemas product?
Okay, well, the Mass Band Association, I joined back in 2022 when I just started Upstage Mass, which was the traditional sailor mass band that we did. And things went well, but then the following year, I think I'm not sure if the association still exists. That's the long and short of it. I'm not sure if it is active and still in existence. However, I can say that the traditional individual and mass band association, Timber, is very much active.
Right.
And I'm also part of that association because there's now been almost a separation of traditional and fancy. Although I'm not sure if I like the idea, but I think there still needs to be some synergy because we're all going to be on the road. So yes, you can have your individual interest in terms of traditional and fancy, but I still think there should be an overarching body for all mass bands because there is a lot of synergies in terms of what we want, our expectations on the road, and so forth. So I think to answer your question, the best thing to do is perhaps have that association functioning, have a representative from that association on the board, because I believe there's a director for mass, but not
a representative from the Mass Band Association.
The Mass Band Association.
That's correct.
And that's an issue. Now that Timber is in existence, I'm sure maybe there's some legal aspects we need to go through, but it would be good to also have a presence from Timber on the board of SMC. So I think that could be good. And I'll just throw in here, because I'm also a promoter, that as promoters we do need to round up ourselves and form a proper association in order. Well, do we?
We have one.
The one with the festivals from Goka?
No. We developed one and we created a whole body from COVID times.
Yes.
Registered one,
but
not active.
Okay.
There's
Right.
not any unity there.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a recurring theme. Whether it's Mass, whether it's Calypso, whether it's the promoters, and PAN is unified in decision making. I don't know how strong the structure is, but PAN is unified in decision making. Are we citing some institutional issues which are then impacting on the delivery of Carnival?
I've been saying that for years. I believe that is one of the structural weaknesses of our Carnival. Because a lot of the controversies that come out of Carnival, a lot of the quarrels that comes out of Carnival, it is a lack of organization within the stakeholders so that they could lobby effectively for what they want from Spicemas. For instance, when the Calypso Association, so the Calypso Association stemmed from Calypso before the days of soca, so that the soca men don't feel represented in either of the two associations. So one soca man say, I want $100,000 for first prize in Soca Monarch. How do you as SMC respond to that? You really and truly can't negotiate with every individual soca artist. So that the soca men and the Calypso men need to be under one umbrella so that they have their meeting and so on and say, okay, their executive on their rep on the board will come to the board and say, well, we've met, these are our demands, this is what we're looking for this year, and so on and so forth. It should be that will be ideal. But when the stakeholder organizations are weak, then it leaves every man on his own, and everybody is lobbying for what they think the interest should be and so on, rather than the collective. And I believe that has been one of the major drawbacks in the growth of our Carnival.
Okay. All right, it's time for our first break. So viewers and listeners, we'll take our first break and we'll come back focusing on Spicemas 2025.
Boyo, they gonna fly with kite now. The wind picking up.
I'm coming. Karim, what you doing?
Fly my kite.
Yeah, but not here. You can't fly kite near power lines, boy.
Why not? The wind good.
Because mommy say kite threads conduct electricity.
Yeah, kite. It's right. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, it can cause power outages, or even worse, it can get shocked.
Come, let's go and fly them in the pasture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Grennidge, energizing our Grenada.
Looking to shop online from your favorite stores like Amazon and Shein? With GPC Global, it's never been easier. Get your very own US address and shop from around the world. With GPC Global, you can order the latest trends and must-have items, all delivered straight to Grenada to your closest post office for your pickup. We offer the cheapest rates and our service is reliable and quick. No more waiting for weeks for your packages. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Join the Grenada Postal family today and start shopping smarter. Visit us online at www.grenadapostal.com or call us on 437-POST. That's 437-7678. GPC Global, your gateway to the world.
Need to install or repair your plumbing? We've got you covered. Whether you're setting up a new washing machine, replacing a leaking faucet, or fixing that pesky dripping pipe, the Plumbing Supply Store is your go-to place in Grenada. We offer a wide range of plumbing products to make both new installations and maintenance a breeze. Our shelves are stocked with top quality products, including pressure and waste fittings. And if you've been struggling with blocked drains, have you heard of Melt? This powerful drain-unblocker liquid is a game changer, designed to prevent and clear blockages, making it ideal for hairdressers dealing with clogged wash sinks. We also carry a wide selection of repair kits and replacement parts to bring new life to old plumbing fixtures. Visit us today on the Woodlands Main Road or call 444-1377 for expert advice, top-notch products, and a warm welcome. At the Supply Store, we do everything plumbing.
Back, viewers and listeners, we're focusing on Spicemas 2025. Montee, you had something to add as you're leaving.
Yes, so listening to this discussion, we have a very similar refrain coming up, which is a lot of hints of dysfunction. And I think one of the things that we have to take head on, whether it's through Spicemas or through the different associations, is to start defining what is the product we call Spicemas, right? And start to chart some way forward as to where we want to see Spicemas in the next 5 years, 10 years with it, right? And when we define what the product is, right, then we wouldn't have some of the problems we have, because some of the problems that Dylan alluded to, it is really friction of the direction of where mass is going. There's no way to hide it or to sugarcoat it. The establishment bans for years have not been in accord. They don't agree with the direction that mass is going. They think it's like how we had way back the Bajan invasion, this come like the Trini invasion to Grenada, whereby Spicemas, or what is Spicemas, is really not Spicemas, it's Trinidad Mass. We're trying to bring Trinidad Mass to Grenada. And there's a lot of people that is against that. There's a lot of people that think, yes, maybe you could look for that outside help, but it does not have to be you taking it hook, line, and sinker and try to fit a Trinidad model in a Grenada space. And I could see both parts of it, because the reality is that Trinidad Mass, they blueprint. If you pay attention to what their product is, they never deviate from it, right? Whether it's big trucks on the road, we don't have the streets to accommodate that. I may agree, some people may differ on that, right? But in everything, you look for the things that works, right? And I'm sure Mr. Arley Gill could allude to that, because I've seen where, and even yourself could see where you all took things that works, even from Trinidad, and worked well in Grenada. Not everything that is a quick fix that could just stick like glue, right? So I think that is where we have to come to have a serious conversation as a meeting of the minds as to where we want to see Spicemas going. What is the product, right? Spicemas in its entirety needs to be defined, and so then when we get to the meeting, then the Marsban Association, we could start having that dialogue as to how do we, with the party bands and the traditional bands, work together to achieve that final product that we call Spicemas. Because outside of that, it's just going to be loggerheads.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just table this, because I'm aware that Spicemas late last year developed a strategic plan. Are we aware of that strategic plan? Have we had sight of the strategic plan? How do you, as promoters, as Mass Band Association leaders or Mass Band leaders, fit into that plan?
Well, if we're speaking about the exercise that we had at the end of last year.
Strategic plan is what I'm referring to. A strategic plan put on by Spicemas, not the symposium on Carnival.
First time I hear about this.
I'm not aware of that strategic plan.
Okay. So, all right, because if we're talking about defining of Spicemas and where we're going, I think that's the strategic plan that we're referring to. And obviously there ought to be buy-in by all stakeholders, and hence there should be knowledge. And one would also assume that you have participated in the development of said strategic plan.
I can't speak to that because, as you say, even when you speak to that of representation on Spicemas, there should be a permanent fixture, and I think Chrissy alluded to that as well, for promoters on the corporation, so that could speak to the issues that affect promoters or event organizers. Right?
But let us also accept what Arley said, in that we have dysfunctional associations across the board.
Right.
So a representative of promoters is not necessarily a representative of a promoters association. And the actual case is the mass representative is not a representative of the mass band association. So here we are, not criticizing SMC as we usually do, but we're looking at the various stakeholder groups, all 5 estates, and saying they're weak, and hence they're not able to influence the functioning of Spicemas for an appropriate delivery.
Responsibility. We can't just every year beat up on SMC. The SMC is weak, you know, and the stakeholders have to take responsibility. Let me tell you something. I was so excited when I heard so much about the creative industry and all of these promoters and mass band leaders and so on are speaking about the creative industry. The creative industry is really where the interlocking of different sectors, it is where creativity meets commerce. It's where creativity meets commerce. You talk about skills and innovations and so on, spanning from music to mass band creation and so on. I thought that the strategic direction for the Ministry of the Creative Industry in Grenada would have begun with the Carnival Arts, because it's low-hanging fruit. So this issue of developing, and anytime you read the ABC in developing the creative industry, the first thing that ever comes out is human capital investments. In other words, developing the skill set and so on, harnessing the skill set and so on. So here you have Dylan speaking about whole night. Thousands of dollars, if not millions, leaving the Grenada carnival market or economy in terms of the creation of the mass, the designing and the building of the mass. So what we need to do now, how do we keep the dollar within Grenada in terms of making that mass, is by developing the skill set across the board. Years ago, when the term creative industry and so on was not even bantered about the way it is now, as minister responsible for culture, I started making of the bands in the schools. And we had the gentleman from Chero's there, Chero's mass band in the old days, going around to the schools and teaching children how to bend and costume design and wire bending and so on, and we have to return to that. So we have to make a serious investment in that. That is not just SMC owned. The Ministry of Trade have to get involved in that. The Ministry of the Creative, instead of having all these conferences to tell you what to do. If they ask me, I could tell them the first 10 things we need to do in the Ministry of the Creative to really get the creative sector going. You don't need conferences, all these conferences and so on. And the Carnival Arts is where you begin. The other issue, we didn't talk about music. You have all these artists, everybody's artists. 60% of the artists can sing with bands. Most of the musicians in the country play every weekend in the churches. The Adventist church and the Catholic church have all the musicians. Don't talk about wind instruments. The only time we have wind instrument players in the police band. If the police band have an official function, then you can't get nobody to blow a trombone or a trumpet anywhere else. These are the strategic investments we need to start making in the carnival arts and the creative industry.
Weave the Cultural Foundation into this conversation for me, please.
I'm not a consultant, you know.
You did say if instead of having conferences, they can ask you.
So
you know we ask. Because we have the Ministry of the Creative Affairs.
The Cultural Foundation, as envisaged, is really and truly to assist with development work, so that SMC really and truly should put on the final product. right? But SMC really and truly ought not to be concerned itself with all of the developmental work. And I really would have thought that the investments would have made in the cultural foundation to really carry some of this load. But I don't know what is the budgetary allocation for the cultural foundation. In my time, the cultural foundation was given $25,000 a month, which is really to pay administrative fees. But in terms of, you put monies within the cultural foundation so they can drive some of the developmental work which we speak of.
And as the next issue that I have now touched on, whether or not Spicemas is well equipped, or the cultural foundation is well equipped to put on Spicemas. We are talking about one of the biggest revenue earners for the island.
The biggest tourism product, hands down.
We keep talking about this economic study that we need to do for Carnival. And again, we're going to go to rules and regulations soon, and the levies and taxes that promoters have to pay. It's not promoters alone that you need to start tapping on. If you're looking at levying some form of revenue from stakeholders, there are taxi promoters, there are hairdressers. All the hotels are booked up. No Airbnbs are booked up. There are a plethora of sectors that benefit from Spicemas.
And don't contribute.
And don't contribute.
Yes, and don't contribute.
Just the promoters and the mass bands. Right. And the mass bands and promoters, again, are tasked with putting on the spectacle.
So you're tasked with putting that on. What type of incentives are you given as promoters, as mass band leaders, in order to put on your products?
Promoters don't have any incentives, as far as I'm aware.
20% of revenue as our
promoters don't have any incentives.
You mean only 20% of it?
No.
Well, I'm just...
She's talking about being 20% tax.
Right. Yeah,
but there's no incentives for a promoter. On the mass band side, because a lot of what we have to do or produce comes from outside, we get waived on import duties or taxes, which is fair in the circumstances. Because if we didn't, then the average man here would not be able to afford Carnival. And we always have to remember, when we're talking about Carnival, Spicemas, we must never forget the locals. I don't want it to get, as Montee was saying, to a point where we forget that Grenada and we only cater to the foreigners. Right. Foreigners play where the locals play. That is my philosophy. I'm not going to Trinidad to figure out where Grenadians play. I go into where the locals play. Same way as any other foreigner come to Grenada, they go into where the locals go on.
They want the spice experience.
They want the spice experience. So we have to find ways of blending, but promoters don't have any incentives, and the only incentive mass band get is a concession agreement.
So the concession deals with the taxes in terms of importation. Is VAT zero rated?
For the importation of your costumes.
VAT is also
and any ancillary services that you may require, because another issue, again, raised by the lack of incentive into the Carnival or creative industry, is that we're very limited in the service providers.
Right.
Let's say Mr. Chrissy has her event on Sunday. There are probably 4 or 5 events on that day.
Right.
How many service providers on the island? There are 3. If those 3 gone, you're goose stuck.
Okay.
You have no sound system, you have no fence, you have no trussing. There's nothing for you to elevate your event or do your event with. And that is based on the limited amount of access.
And if you get it, you're getting it late.
And it affects your execution. So then you therefore have to go outside now and import, which then again increases your overall cost. And this is what the public isn't seeing. They think promoters make. I don't know if Spicemas think promoters make as well. But the VAT and then the additional 5% that they're charging us to put on an event before we even sell a ticket. I mean, so there's kind of some heavy weights on you to push you.
Let me just delve into that one a little bit more. Promoters. Do promoters operate as registered companies and by virtue of that have tax credits when they file the returns at the end of the business year? Or are they an event by event type of occurrence?
Event, even if you own a company, it's always event by event.
And
regardless of the size of the event as well.
And I want to get into that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm wearing all my hats today.
Yes.
Unlike every other industry in Grenada, when it comes especially to VAT, every other industry has a threshold. You have to make a certain amount annually to register for VAT. Promoters don't have that. They don't have that shield. So let's say
300,000.
300,000 for every other thing. So no, EC.
Sorry, 300,000.
So unlike the small shop owner who could afford to sell his thing for a little cheaper than the supermarket and still make money and still make a little profit, the promoter doesn't have that safeguard.
Let me see if I'm understanding you. So you have a registered company, let's call it D4, right? And the purpose of that company is an entertainment company, and you have activities throughout the year. You're saying that your VAT liability is for each event, as opposed to, or your taxation reliability is for each event, as opposed to the end of the year, because VAT is supposed to pay in every month. I mean, every business does that, right? So you should pay in every event. The question is, at the end of the year, do you have an incentive and credit regime where you can get returns for the investment?
Let's not even reach there yet. I think you're missing the first point, which is that if we're going to apply the same standard that the other sectors have for their sectors in the VAT scheme, which is the 300,000 threshold, the average promoter is not hitting $300,000.
Right.
Right? No, the bigger events, the bigger ones for sure. The bigger ones for sure. The average promoter is not doing that. So you are looking at a reduced value of your product. So let's say if Chrissy having an event and she wants the actual cost of the event is $75. She has to reduce that by 15% to be able to stay competitive and still let the average person afford her event and be able to garner that revenue. Now, the next thing you're talking about, I guess you're talking about input versus outputs. A lot of these service providers fall into the other sectors, and they're not registered for VAT. So we can't claim back that input.
So again, here is work for the Ministry of Creative Affairs, because we need to regularize, therefore, the industry, because it is unfair for you to be supporting the largest cultural event in Grenada, and there isn't a return on investment, as it were, as it would be for every other business, because it is a business. Let me just table this. Do you believe, though, that this practice of microscopic management of promoters is to guard against things like money laundering? Because we do know the entertainment industry is one of the places where this occurs, that car rentals and the like. I mean, that's documented. So do you believe that that is a reason, and how can promoters come together to say we are not a part of that group, but hence we deserve the type of treatment that every other business is getting?
I don't think that's the case. I mean, Chris, you could call me on that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Eddie and I were part of a tax workshop, funny enough, by the Creative Affairs Office, and it included representatives from IRD, Inland Revenue Department, and they literally explained to us years ago when this 15% VAT from first ticket for promoters, when it happened, there weren't enough stakeholder engagement. And then back then, events weren't as prominent as they were before. And they literally used the same analogy that small businesses have that threshold for a certain reason, and the same reason they've used apply to small promoters who aren't on that threshold. So the truth is, it is an opportunity now for us to perhaps follow up on that conversation and say, hey, a few of us as promoters would like to engage you so you understand the business a bit better. We are just like a small shop. We ain't reaching that 300,000 threshold, but we're being charged 15%. And as carnival promoters, we're charged an additional 5%. So it's 20%. So 20, and this is where the 20% is coming from.
And that 5% is the licensing fee from SMC.
The licensing fee, which in itself perhaps also requires some level of transparency in terms of how it's calculated, what the fees are, whether they could be negotiated or not. I'm hearing they can be negotiated, which means that we probably have a problem with that 5%.
But is the 5% based on your own declaration? Because it isn't based on the number of individuals you anticipate coming to the event and, of course, the price of your ticket.
Correct. Yeah. It is based on that. And however, we submit an application stating those things. So if I say there are 500 people coming to the event, they're paying $75, there is some formula being worked on behind the scenes that we are not aware of in order to tell us what that so-called 5% is. Now, there's an issue here too, because
5% is 5%. So the question is 5% on what? 5%
of your revenue.
Right.
Your perceived revenue.
So that should be declared, because 500 people at $75 a ticket, that 5% should be very transparent.
It should be, but for some reason we are seeing a variety of figures being told to different people, because we are all, you know, we talk.
So I think
go ahead, Dylan.
That 5%, right? Because remember, we just spoke about administering the 15% VAT. Is that 5% being administered after you put in the 15% VAT?
No, so the 5% comes before your event is even allowed to happen. So it's even before somebody walks in the door.
Right, it's a licensing fee.
It's a licensing fee. If your event busts, so if you said 500 people come in, but then 200 people come, you have already paid 5% for that 500 people that you anticipated coming.
Understood.
You know, so that's how it's, I mean, it makes sense. We do need to pay a fee. However, including all the things we've just talked about, there are no incentives for promoters. We do not receive concession. We are contributing to the overall carnival product. If we understand the person coming in for carnival, if we understand the Grenadian person taking part in carnival, they are largely interested in the event and the road. Full stop.
Okay.
The road including Juve.
Let Dylan get out. Go ahead, Dylan.
If I may jump in here. So, on reading the Spicemas regulation, or the Spicemas committee regulations, that collection of the licensing fee upfront is not really meant for local promoters. Now, we've talked a lot about how Spicemas Corporation is handicapped in terms of their financing. What they should do, and I don't know if promoters may like it or not, is do similar to what the VAT office does. Send someone to your front gate and count the amount of people you have in the event. But I don't know if they have the finances to resources to do that.
It could just be a partnership with the VAT office.
Well, I don't know if that is possible as well. So what ends up happening is that they don't know the number. So let's say Chris gave an example of, you
500, but 200 would be 500 and 2,000.
Correct.
Right.
And that is what is what tends sometimes happens.
Right.
And that's where the Spicemas Corporation may feel short-sighted or short-ended or whatnot. But the problem that can be fixed, that pay up-front system is really not meant for, if you read that, it's really not meant for the local promoters, because we're here. We're not going anywhere. That is meant for the foreign promoter who wants to come to Grenada and do an event. The act gives the...
But you're making that akin to a withholding tax.
Correct. So, but not even a withholding tax. You have to put some skin in the game if you want to get a license.
Right.
If you want to come and do an event, put on a deposit of XYZ, and then we give you a license.
Okay. Ali?
That 5% is not in the original Spicemas Act. I know that. And this issue of the licensing fee, you have to understand the genesis of it was brought in to give Spicemas another revenue stream, basically. Because really and truly, as much as I like these promoters, they could promote around Christmas time, I'd have no problem. But they promote around Carnival because Carnival create the environment for them to do business. So that since I pay in as Spicemas, all the free shows on the streets, and I have to pay to clean it up and so on, after is fair enough that they could they can make a contribution.
Right.
I don't like the idea, the 5%. That is not what the act envisaged, the original act envisaged. The 5% came up as an amendment. And I think that the 5% together with the VAT is too much for the promoters. You don't kill. Spicemas needs the private promoters, you don't kill them. I would much prefer to see a flat rate on a simple basic principle of small, medium, and large events, and you play a flat price. Right? $500 for small, $1,000 for medium, $1,500 for major. End that 5% once and for all. The irony of this thing is that VAT, the central government taking 15% and not reinvesting it in Carnival. That's it. That's my beef, you know. Central government, this year, as I understand it, makes allocation for Carnival $1 million. And they later on in the year, in the month, they'll raid lottery for additional monies. But central government is not giving back as it should. And it's not about NNT and NDC, all of them doing the same thing. Regardless of which party, they don't. Successive governments come into office and do not see Carnival as an investment. They do not regard it as the major tourism product that it is, and they are not putting the monies there. So that I disagree fundamentally with this 5%. I think a simple threshold, 500 for small events, and I got so annoyed in my short stint as chair when the police called me and find out somebody having a birthday party. Police said them go by SMC. Some hotel having a little event, no, that's not what it was meant for. You know what I mean? The major Carnival event. So I think that needs to be sorted out. But two things. We need to regulate the entertainment industry. Apart from Carnival, I hear that coming out from the promoters. Right. So that needs to be done. If we're talking, you don't need a conference for that. Somebody needs to come up with a white paper of how we're going to structure the entertainment industry. Somebody needs to get down and do some work. And secondly, the Masbad, what coming through that again is the weak stakeholder organization with the Masband, with the promoters that do not have a voice because they don't have an organization. So that we hear them as individuals, but they do not speak collectively, so that they can seriously advocate day in and day out for what is it that they want to see the industry look like. So that the promoters themselves are shooting themselves in the foot by not having a proper organization to speak on their behalf.
All right. Viewers and listeners, it is time for a final break. Of course, when we come back, you can contribute 440-1252. That's the number that you'll call in. We'll be back shortly.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Have you ever wondered how you can benefit from the Grenada Citizenship by Investment Program? Then I Am Your Grenada invites you to its public forum on May 13th at 5:30 p.m. at the Grenada Trade Center. Regulations have changed to create more space for local participation, for local developers and those who want to become local developers to tap into new opportunities. Hear from top experts from the CBI Committee, I Am Your Grenada, and GIDC. This is your opportunity to learn the process, ask your questions, and and learn how to be involved. So don't miss this chance. Remember, Grenada Trade Center at 5:30 p.m. on May 13th. See you there.
Attention all divers, snorkelers and underwater enthusiasts. Effective May 15th, 2025, all visitors to the renowned Mullinaire Underwater Sculpture Park will be required to pay a small fee of US $3.50 or EC $10 per person. These fees are essential to support the ongoing maintenance and repairs of the sculptures, as well as the development of new features to ensure the park remains a world-class attraction. Payment can be made through the Grenada Tourism Authority's online payment portal, available on the Pure Grenada website, www.puregrenada.com. We thank you for your support in enhancing this extraordinary underwater product. This announcement is brought to you by the Grenada Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism, dedicated to protecting and conserving Grenada's resources for the enjoyment of all.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grennidge.com.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're focusing on Spicemas 2025. You certainly can weigh in with your opinions and recommendations for Spicemas 2025 and beyond. 440-1252, that's the number that you can contribute on. Are there any new regulations that you've been informed about, whether it's, we were on taxes for a little bit, but just in the regulations governing the rollout of the season?
I don't know if it's new regulation. I don't know if they were properly rolled out, but there was a document floating around, one that required, if you wanted to have an event in the carnival window and you were a foreign entity, you had to partner with a local entity. Okay. As one that I can remember off the top of my head. And the one that caused the most noise and most confusion was the requirement to submit financial records and statements, financial statements. And I think everybody kicked up a storm and said, hell no. Because I don't even think I already have that level of power to demand that just so. So.
Okay.
Another thing I remember, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chrislyn.
Another thing I remember mention of, but I haven't received any formal communication from the Spicemas Corporation, is not wanting to have fringe events the same time as Spicemas events. I don't know how formal that is, but I've heard of it. And it's definitely not something I fully agree with, simply because if we understand again the type of person who's coming to Carnival and enjoying Carnival, for instance, the person going to the Mardi Gras is not the person coming to Beach Bum.
I understand that there's 17 of us who go to the Mardi Gras. Very few of us will do both. But we do have a caller online. Good evening, caller, and welcome.
Oh, good evening. It's a timely program, seeing that we're coming into the carnival season. And I know earlier in the program, there was a statement about the different estates that carnival is expected to focus on or who have interest in carnival. One of the estates that is never considered, in my opinion, as I'm not anymore a mass player, I'm not a calypsonian, I did all those things before, are the spectators. and nothing is considered, and no one considers either the pain or the walking spectators. So, for example, I go to every carnival show. That's just a fact. I go to every carnival show, right? But the issue is, so for example, when I sit in the lagoon until 1:30 at night waiting for the first band to come across, whether it's Monday night mass or others, no. The mass players who have paid to pay mass have no difficulty. They are having fun. But it is disrespectful to me, and they wouldn't be there if there are no spectators. That's just a fact. But there is no regard, there's absolutely no regard for the public in all the decisions that are being made. And in fact, whether it is the organizers, the Spicemas organizers, or the promoters, or anybody else, no consideration is given to us, the patrons, who without us, there is no carnival. Without us, it just ends up like what Rainbow City Festival has come to. So I think that somehow there can be no organization representing the spectators, but somehow all the people involved need to give some thought to the disrespect that is being shown to the spectators.
Thank you very much.
And it is we who pay for everything.
Thank you very much. Totally understandable there. So respect for the spectators, but this goes back to production of events. That's what I'm really hearing. Whether it's the street parades or the events. If you advertise gates open at 7, showtime is 9, first act can be 1 a.m.
But it's more than that. Is what I alluded to. We have to define what Spicemas is, right? We have a demographic that we decide I think largely we have left behind, which is the more mature persons that we figure, okay, they no longer nimbly love to play mass, so like they don't want to watch mass, right? And now, because there's no longer pageant and these things, we never look for another solution. Whether it's to
there is pageant. Pageant is now basically on the streets. But let's do this.
Yeah.
I have a different take on it, but I'll let you.
Yeah. Production of events.
Yes, production is important, but you have to have a staging area, right? So let me ask you this. The 60-something or the 70-something-year-old that wants to come and watch at mass, right? That thinks one or two things. The mass that they're showing us is no longer for we, or how they, because we have all-inclusive and nobody in busy to reach wherever the savannah is, right? They're in busy because at the end they pay the money, right? They think they're getting their value for money. So my thing is that when we define what we want to do and we tell these band leaders, this is a product, this is what we want to put out there, right? These are the things, the boxes you have to tick, right? Whether there's penalties or whatever it is for even the pays that the band
Dylan?
Yeah.
So I have a different take on it. And again, I don't want to come down on Spicemas too much because it's not really Spicemas' fault primarily. Again, Spicemas Corporation is ill-equipped to handle the logistic needs of Monday and Tuesday. And I say that to say that Juve must finish at 10 o'clock. If you intend for parade to start at 12, you need time to clean the streets and put on your sand and then allow for the trucks to then make their way to the starting point. And the reason why I say Spicemas is ill-equipped is because the police are also ill-equipped. They're short on numbers, right? Simple. Mm-hmm. I've been to the biggest carnival couple of years, the Trinidad, the Barbados, the St. Lucia, the St. Vincent. I don't know if Grenada, the size we're at right now, we probably need to have an influx of assistance. But when you sit down and you watch these mega productions, like let's say Trinidad, the same area that had 5,000 people, let's say I don't know if everyone knows Soca Brainwash is. Soca Brainwash happened the Saturday. These guys broke down the entire setup, and then another setup happened for another big event for the next 5,000 people the next day. And right after that, that broke down, and another setup happened within 48 hours. About 20,000 people accommodated. And that was the coordination between, or the logistics between the police and these different entities. No, but that's hands that we don't have. So if we're lacking something, then we need to bring in stuff. Again, that's not for Spicemas alone to take care of. That is also for the Cultural Foundation and also the central government to realize Spicemas can't handle.
Let me ask this question, and Ali, you certainly can respond to my question with the additional comment. Are we attempting to do too many things on Monday? We have Juve, we have the Parade of the Bands, we have Monday Night Mass. Now, no other carnival, including Trinidad, has those two such big events, Juve and Monday Night Mass, which are central to their carnival, and try to pull off a parade in between.
And let me be fair. If we take away that, you take away an element of what Spicemas is.
Correct.
And you can't do that.
Yeah,
right?
but can we also take on board that we're taking away what Spicemas is, but it's a point I was making earlier, trying to bring Trinidad blueprint to Grenada, right? No. You have to take on board that we go in the carnival, right? But it does not mean that every aspect that you're bringing is conducive for what you're bringing it into.
All right.
Bring it into that
so if I can,
on Monday night.
Let's just, Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to go back to spectator experience. So that is very important. And I will defer to a very good friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Elon Robinson. Elon has delivered a brilliant paper on Carnival Spectator Experience. So I would, recommend that SMC, for instance. And that's extremely important because back in the day when we started to really look at customer spectator experience, that was the genesis of bringing in the bleachers, introducing the toilets along the route and so on. And so now we should have had more bleachers, more toilets along the route.
No, we should have had bleachers.
No, we should have had bleachers and so on. So that is what we fall
SMC.
into. SMC. That's
right. We have another caller online, so let's take the caller and come back. Good evening, caller. Welcome. We lost that caller.
So I was saying that Elon Robinson is a extent reservoir of knowledge of how that can be done in a very serious way. I called Dillon last year, maybe Ash Wednesday, and commended his band for the timelessness and the punctuality of his production. So I hear him when he say we need to get people. I don't know who was in his band that did it, maybe not him, maybe a Trini. but having said that, I don't think it's just about additional hands to get it done. I think it's discipline among the band players. Now we have an issue with regards to resources, trucks, DJs, and so on. The same truck, Juve had to line up for the evening and having to line up for the Monday night.
And this is why production is important.
And that is why you're saying, and that is why the last question you ask is whether we're trying to do too much. Because for the amount of the same, I heard you gentlemen say we have three in terms of the resources, in terms of the song systems, the tents, the barriers, and so on. We have limited persons that do that. So that I know for Monday Night Mass and so on, bands are waiting on the trucks to finish it with one of the mass bands. So that's an issue.
It's back to Spicemas marshalling. It comes back to Spicemas saying, because unlike my band that just focuses on Pretty Mass, the other bands have Juve and they have Monday Night Mass.
Right.
So all I have to focus on is, and that's why we specifically did it this way, we want to make sure that the Pretty Mass experience that we deliver is top notch.
Right.
So we're not going to mix up anywhere else.
Right.
To Eddie's point and to Ali's point. We want to focus on that.
So you're not doing too much because you're focused.
We focus. So I am starting, if they say 12 o'clock, I am on the road. My masquerader better be there. And Ali could tell you because he driving somewhere last year and asking this masquerader, well, where you going already? He say, boss man, if I don't leave here, no, my band leave me already. And that's the reputation that we have.
Because Colin, in Crop Over, masqueraders are out 5 a.m., 6 a.m. going to meet their bands. So the mass band leaders needs to take charge of their. You can't be doing Juve and then want to do the Monday evening and then the Monday night mass.
These are for the party bands. The reference here is for some of the party bands have these 3 categories. If we just to bring it back to Spicemas, and what are we known for? Leading on Eddie.
I feel for the spectators because I grew up loving to going out to see Monday Night Mass. The stick.
That's one of our strengths,
right? But you can't have a truck or a band coming down the road or down starting Mass at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when Monday Night Mass is predominantly supposed to start around 6, 7.
Yeah.
Right? So you have this band who's supposed to go and turn around and get all the way down to Grennidge, Belmont to start his Monday night.
We have another caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. 2 points. Monday night, good show. Monday Night Mass could be a week before, when sometimes you have less activities and it's a means to draw more people to Grenada. Monday Night Mass doesn't have to be the same Monday that we have Juve and Pajan and Fancy Mass. It's too much on one day. Secondly, we need to talk about the Fancy Mass and what we call Fancy Mass. A lot of naked people with strings. It is not mass, and that is degrading the carnival. And we have a lot of children and elderly people watching the parade of the bands, and it is very ugly. We need to do something better, and I don't think taxpayers' money should support these kinds of naked mass. The taxpayers' money should go towards the creative, the traditional mass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments?
Yeah. Monday Night Mass can move. Monday Night Mass and Monday Night Mass is one of our strong aspects or distinguishable features of our carnival. In fact, I was thinking that the theme for this year's carnival is what? The best mass by far. I always prefer our themes of carnival to highlight a distinguishable feature of carnival. I think it's extremely important for marketing. So, I mean, I don't expect you to do 100,000 job every year, but
112,000 it is now.
But I would have I'd like to see more thought being put into our themes of carnival. When a couple of years after the COVID, we did the return because we didn't have carnival for a couple of years. But I want to see our themes of carnival, you know, Veco, shot the Monday Night Mass and so on and so forth, varied and different things like that. But I would like to see the themes of carnival add into the brand of Spicemas rather than just another eerie fairy statement. And so I just thought I wanted to plug that.
Okay.
But as Ali said, Monday Night Mass ain't going nowhere. We're known for Monday Night Mass, we're known for the best Juve, and these have always been what the expectation is. Now we have had the Fancy Mass growing and growing exponentially. Now, you may hear me say this over and over, because I believe that is the nucleus of the problem. Our product is evolving, but it is evolving without structure, right? And we're trying to fit something in that's something it was never built for. So whether we want to accept it or not, right? Years ago when we went Monday Night Mass, we never had one band having 3 trailer trucks on the road. How cumbersome that becomes navigating on the streets of Grenada. I like to jump up just like anybody else behind a big trailer truck, but is it feasible? Is it the product that we can offer and offer it effectively? And until we have that serious conversation, it may mean that we come up with something totally different that we did not even think of. But sometimes we are selfish in nature in that we see something that we like somewhere in a big carnival, and we think, okay, because of this experience that you had there, you want to have it here, you want to bring it to Grenada. Right? So what makes us unique? The sad things when it comes to talking about products, when you're making all products the same, is that the only thing that you have to differentiate is the service. Right? And then when you can't differentiate from any other, at least when Grenada no longer becomes the happening mass, this too can pass. So I would continue to beat that drum. that we need to define what we want Spicemas to be, right? And stop allowing Spicemas to evolve without control and without any master plan as to where we want it to go.
Right. It's approaching time because it's almost, we can get some recommendations for low-hanging fruits that can be addressed prior to August 2025, but also some things as we look towards the future that we would like to see from Spicemas. Dylan, you up?
Just to improve overall road logistics, in that I don't know if the police need more assistance. As I was going, the police seem to need more assistance on the road. There's always the call for there's not enough officers to police the route, and that ends up becoming a cumbersome traffic bottleneck along the Grand and Spain Road. So the overall logistic package of Carnival, which will aid in the spectators getting a timely mass or time to spectate everything. Again, I grew up being on top by the craft center or along Port Highway, watching and spectating. I don't want to take that from anybody else, because that's how I saw the mass. That's why I got involved in Carnival. So I think that's a low-hanging fruit. That could just be a simple injection from central government or from some other means of wherever Spicemas gets assistance from to beef up their production. In the long run, I think there needs to be incentives around mass band. Mass band creation, mass band development, and then also incentives for the promoters. There needs to be some discussion around the levies and taxes that we face in putting on our events and bringing and propelling Spicemas.
Okay. Chrissy?
I agree with Dylan. I think the entire ecosystem needs to be looked at. It's not low-hanging fruit. It may take some time, but definitely low-hanging fruit. We can reduce or remove that threshold or let that threshold be on par with other small businesses for promoters of Carnival and promoters in general in Grenada. I think that's something that can happen before August 2025. And
you want to repeat that?
That's something that, I could pick it. It's right there. I don't need a ladder to get up to that tree. And also, I'd say if we really and truly look at and understand the Carnival lover for every single event, because there's a different audience profile based on every single event that Spicemas does. We have to truly understand what they like, what they don't like, what their desires are, so that we can, from top down, make correct decisions for the benefit of Spicemas, the government, Grenada, and all stakeholders involved with Spicemas.
Okay. Yeah. I will give the former minister the last word. So, Montee?
Yes, so low-hanging fruit. Yeah, so when it comes to mass, I think one of the things that we really need to move towards is to make mass and the streets a venue that is supposed to be, give mass a home. I think is important. As a person that called online who wants to come and look at mass, there needs to be a place, a safe space for them to be able to engage in looking at mass. The other point she made about the costume, there's a whole different other conversation I can address. I think it is important for us to do. I think we need to even start looking at whether or not, I think we have outgrown the present mass route, because I think it somewhat becomes, we play in this game of the snake eating the tail, go wrong to Antine and then you reach by Tropicana and then you can't move because a band's still coming, right? So somebody need to wake up and say, well, this model no longer works. We may need to start moving from this, go down to the south, right, instead of coming up, right? All these things, I think, is things that we have to look at, because in terms of production of the mass, delivering the product, food is another element that we need to address. We need to stop looking. Carnival is on Spicemas is our premier musical and cultural festival, and there's no festival without food. And if we Spicemas, our food should reflect that, not chicken and chips, right? On the promoters and event organizers standpoint, it is important that we get some serious representation, serious discussion with regards to the administering of taxation with regard to events. I think the 15% is not a fair tax. I think it's an unjust tax because, as I say, all of that legitimate businesses have a threshold unless you think we're not a legitimate business, right? So I think we should be treated as such. And even with the overall administering of the different events and so, you can't, as I always say, we can't make policy or try to kill a mosquito with a sledgehammer. Sometimes you have to use a scalpel. And until we start doing that, we're not going to solve the problems that we have. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Arley?
I would just offer maybe two practical suggestions going forward for Spicemas 2025. Then we're going to come back together after Carnival 2025 to speak about 2026. But for now, what I want to do is to beseech Spicemas Corporation to, within the next 2-3 weeks, to work overtime to iron out all the kinks with the promoters and all the outstanding business. Carnival has already been launched, so we cannot argue that those things should have gone on before. We can agree that that would have been ideal. But all of the different issues with the promoters and whoever else, I would say to the chair and to the CEO, over the next 2 weeks and so on, make it your business to just finish with that. Meet with them and iron out. And one of the things that they can do is to avoid implementing major new policy decisions within those 2 weeks, which will be difficult to roll out. Last year, for instance, we had this very late announcement about artists coming in for the last weekend of Carnival and so on. If we can avoid that, we'll avoid controversies, so I'm asking that. I would really want to see a better, earlier production of the Monday night mass. So in that regard, I would want to encourage Spicemas to first of all see if they can do an audit of the Monday night mass bands to find out where they're getting their sound systems and trucks and so on before, to see if they can have a close to possible timely start. If not, maybe what they can, if they don't think they may be able to do it, maybe what they can do is maybe cut down on the route. Meaning that you probably, instead of going further down Grennidge, you might start a little bit higher up, so that the spectator experience on the Maurice Bishop, the Kirani James Boulevard, going onto the Port Highway and so on can be better. So those are, I believe, 2 areas that I think we can improve on this year. The Juve will be Juve, I hear Dylan, and I agree with him. We have to, and I've written on that. We can't play Juve 2 and 3 in the afternoon on a Monday. It's our Carnival, the people come ready to play jab. Yes, and that's our most distinguishable feature of Carnival. But our Carnival is not just jab. And some years ago, there was a lot of debate and discussion of why the Juve starting so late, because we move Calypso finals to the Thursday and we give a promoter the Sunday. Well, last year, we had Calypso finals on the Sunday and Juve still reach late. I think we have so many different activities now, boat rides, all-inclusive fests on the Sunday and so on. I know people need to feel they need to get sleep before they come and play the jab. But, it's a serious thing. I like the jab 4 morning. Yeah. That's what it is. But I believe at a convenient time, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., that we need to lock off the Juve and the jab, and then so that we give other aspects of Carnival you know, the stage. Jab can have the stage again. We go get a little piece of the stage Tuesday. We agree on that because it's one carnival, 2 juvies. So we take a little piece of it Tuesday, the jab, and so on. We could take a little piece of it Tuesday, but we have to sort of share. We have to share, and the jab have to share. So this year I want to ask the jab to share.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arley Gill, Montee Grennidge, Dylan Charles, Chrislyn Lashington, for sharing on your expertise re-carnival, and to you, our listeners and viewers, for joining us. I think the overall message that we heard: stakeholder engagement, strengthening of institutions, investment in the carnival arts, and a production that will take all stakeholders into count, basically, so that we can have a Spicemas that we can be proud of. Sharing of the stage, that requires proper production, all hands on deck. That message falls on whichever ears would like to hear it. Thank you so very much for being a part of this evening's program, and I look forward to being with you again in the next 6 days, 22.5 hours. Take good care. Godspeed.